Hey, sorry about that game last night. We had to spank you.
Well, credit where credit's due. So it was pretty thorough walloping there. So I don't mind that. I'll give you credit where credit's due for sure. I always try to make a few exciting plays out of it, but then it is what it is. So yeah.
Other than the untying of the shoe. Come on, guys.
That was weird, and I'm not. Nobody can condone that. I mean, that's just ridiculous.
About the guys who whacked with a helmet.
I mean, the funnier part would have been tying them together, and that would have been funny. You know.
They took it off.
Yeah, it's just bizarre. Yeah. There's so much, eye gouging and everything that goes under the radar as well. So it's,
I got it.
oh. What game? So I grew up near Ann Arbor, Michigan, and there was a.
So I heard they wanted an X-rating class.
Yeah, they matriculated the ball for a home run. You like that? This is my Liberia garb. This is so I can blend in when I'm in Liberia. They put this on, nobody notices. Except I'm a lot taller.
Are they fairly short people?
Yeah. For the most part, they're diminutive in stature. Yeah.
Some nutritional.
I think that's part of it. Part of it's genetics. Part of it is just nutrition. When you're eating, one meal a day maybe, and things. And I'll talk a little bit about the food we get too. And it's it sustains, but it's not like the killer kids. They they send them out to do their chores in their bare feet so they grow nice and tall and absorb that. So, all right. Well, I'm going to get started because I want to just share as much as I can today, and if there's anything left yet for the weeks to come, we'll just keep sharing them. And because there is lots to talk about with respect to the Liberia. Wait, I got it right here. But let's start with a prayer. Let us pray. Stir up your power, O Lord, and come, that by your protection we may be rescued from the threatening perils of our sins and saved by your mighty deliverance. For you live and reign with the Father and the Holy Spirit, one God, now and forever. Amen. So last week I shared a little bit about our, just in general, what travel was like there, our first trip over in 2012, and this was the class that was there today. We handed out certificates for the pastor's workshop, and the pastor's workshop really began when Michael Saylor, his congregation had been supporting Joe's work with the schools for several years, and they decided that they would like to go to send a group from their congregation to Liberia and see firsthand what had been being done with the schools. And so he and his one daughter and a few members of the church who had been involved with it all went over and really more or less just to tour the schools, to see firsthand what all had been going on with the resources they had been providing Joe. And they get there, and the pastors in the area were kind of like, I think Joe sort of mentioned this last week, they're like, you do teacher workshops, what about us? And he was like, well, yeah, that's something we could probably think about doing at some point or whatever. And they're like, well, he's a pastor. Let's, have him teach us. Why not right now? And they were sort of like, Mike was kind of like, I don't know how I can say no to that right at that very moment. So really, it was just like 2 days long. He just kind of did a Q&A with them and just kind of taught them some things. He went back the second year, walked them through the entire catechism, and they were just hungry for more. And he was presenting about it, at an LWML meeting or something like that, and Joe was there, and Joe is just sort of whimsically persuasive. He's like, you should go. And I'm like, I can't say why I shouldn't go. I don't know. And so, yeah, I should. So I did go. And so I traveled with Pastor Saylor and myself, and we went over, and the workshop continued to grow, and then we went back the next year as well. But it really all began with the schools that Joe had been starting, and as he reported last week, he now operates 14 schools in the rural areas of Liberia, not just the one town where we were, but now in several other areas, and he's serving 5,700 students in those schools, K through 12. And yeah, it's sort of unbelievable when you sort of drink that in for a moment. It's like, that's a lot of kids. And he, I didn't get the number that we did take a door offering last week. It was well over $500.
Oh, wow. Fantastic.
And so Joe told us that for one student to attend his school, tuition free for an entire year is $25. So $500, so we got 2,000 kids. No, that's not right. 4 kids per 100 times 5, 20 kids. 20 kids get to go just based on our door offering. That's fantastic. I mean, that's just unbelievable. So here's an idea. Here's some pictures of the schools as we were touring in them. So you can see the construction is they're mud bricks on sort of wood lath structure, like the old plaster and lath thing. So they have sort of main beams, and they have cross sections, and they have these wooden forms that they basically just dig a mud pit, and they're pouring water in, and people are stomping around in it, and they scoop out the mud, and they kind of slam it into these forms, and then they set them out, and they dry for a little while, and then they stick them in there, and that is a way that they build. And the upgraded version of that is maybe they'll get dry mixed concrete, and they'll sort of smear that over that as sort of a plaster to help waterproof it a little more. So that's sort of level 2 construction. And level 3 would be that they would actually make their own cinder blocks from that pre-mixed concrete. If they get enough concrete, they'll actually pour. They have their own wooden forms basically to make the cinder blocks too. Same idea. Instead of slamming the mud into it, they'll put the concrete in there, let it cure, and then they'll build with that as well. And then over the top, they'll either have thatch roofing, or again, the upgraded roofing is corrugated steel or corrugated aluminum that they put over it. They call it tin over there. It's not really a tin roof, but that's just sort of their shorthand for it. Corrugated roofing over it, and that'll help make everything last even longer.
Is there a roof on that? It looks
There is. It's hard to see. It's because of the way the light's coming up underneath.
It's a clear.
It is the corrugated. You can see it a little bit, right?
Yes.
So,
Was it fiberglass or tin?
tin. Yeah. And then desks are made out of wood, which is okay.
Yeah.
But with the termites that they have there and the moisture, wood products don't last very long at all. And so one other thing that Joe does, and that we were able to do in Van Wert, they had built a new elementary school. They were consolidating the buildings, and we're basically going to tear down all this stuff. And I got hold of the school district, and I said, we got this project. Can we come and salvage the desks and chairs and anything that you're not interested in keeping that was just going to get scrapped? Can we salvage this to send it to Liberia? And they agreed, actually. So we came in and over a couple days cleared out several hundred desks and chairs and tables and file cabinets, which file cabinets were really, really important because otherwise their records, the school records, they just are sort of sitting out, and which of course is paper product, which is of course, termites love that too, and things. So those file cabinets were like golden to them. And then Joe loads these into shipping containers and then sends them over to Liberia, where they arrive. They get loaded onto a truck, and then they get trucked into the rural areas where the schools are. And he's there right now, actually, receiving several truckloads from an organization called Orphan Grain Train. It's a group of Missouri Synod Lutherans based out of Nebraska, but stations all over the United States, that was started by a guy who did trucking. He had his own trucking company, large trucking company. And what his spiritual gift was logistics. I mean, he knew how to get what he needed where fast. So they have these warehouses staged all over the U.S., and they palletize various things based on specific needs. So they'll have a pallet of men's winter clothes, kids' summer clothes, generators, food materials, so things appropriate for different emergencies, different climates, things like that. So you don't just send a bunch of boxes of clothing to Haiti in their winter coats. That would be pointless. But they can load up, pallets and pallets of summer clothing and food and generators and things onto a shipping container and have it in Haiti, like when the hurricanes and earthquakes hit and stuff like that. They're some of the first ones that are on the ground there, because he knows how to get stuff where it needs to be. So Joe's there right now receiving a bunch of those shipping containers. And because if they arrive in the port, and if he's not there, then it'll either disappear, or the people, even the churches that are in the main city area there, if they know that it's there and things, they'll kind of take their pick of things, and then it doesn't really always filter out into the rural areas. And so he gets there and he makes sure that it gets where. That's why he's focusing on those rural areas, because a lot of things just make it to the main city and they kind of get stuck there first, further out. So these are sort of wooden desks and benches, but we've upgraded a number of those to metal and regular school desks like you would expect. So they have their uniforms, the green and yellow. It's funny how the different denominations have sort of their uniform colors across the country. And it's actually kind of stretches further further across Africa. So if you see a kid in green and yellow, they go to a Lutheran school. If they're wearing blue, they go to the Roman Catholic school. It's just kind of interesting how it's sort of easily identified. These are green, and it's just the color on it. So yeah, they're green and yellow.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Now, the kids with the uniforms, is the money, the $25, is that part of what pays for the uniform?
Yes.
Because I imagine these families don't have the money.
Correct. Yeah, it does help.
That
Yeah.
is part of that.
That's part of it as well. Yep. And book bags and pencils and
There you can see the grade.
all kinds of things. Yeah.
I have to, what amazes me with this mission here is, okay, you see all this stuff on television, feed the children, or, some of these really far out there, like the Holocaust Jews of Russia. I mean, there can't be too many of them left from the Holocaust, but anyways.
Right,
But
okay.
you don't know how much the proceeds is lining someone else's pocket because they got some speaker or something like, where at least with Joe,
Yeah. Yeah.
you know that 100% is going to these schools, where on some of these other places it's like, is it?
Yeah, every ministry, every nonprofit has a certain amount of overhead, and to keep the thing running, and they give various scores for what is a good ratio of how much of what comes in goes toward administration and how much of it actually goes directly into the ministries. And I think even a grade A score, I think, is in the 80% range. And so if you have 15 to 20% going toward administration, that's still considered a very good ratio. Well, we know that with Joe, he's supporting himself from his own work, and that these donations and things are going directly to that, directly going to the logistics of getting things over there, things like that. Even something like Orphan Grain Train, I think it's like 98%. Is only like 2 or 3% is administrative cost. Everything else is directly into getting things where they need to be, which is unheard of as far as a great ratio of those things. So I think that's an important thing to consider when you're looking at where do we send charitable dollars, is to say, you know, get your bang for the buck, right? So there's your, they are working on a blackboard. It's hard to get a drywall anchor into a mud wall. So it just leans, and you know what, it works. So Joe showed some pictures last week of a school that they had rebuilt in one area. This was the old school that we had gone and visited. It was really high up on a hill and things, all mud and things, and now they had built with more cinder block things as well. So they sort of upgraded those facilities. So this is in the city of one of the city churches and schools, and so this is graduation. So kind of neat. This is a picture Joe had provided me. So, here's construction in process. So you can see the corrugated roofing. And when we're in those buildings and we're giving the presentations, you know, like we're doing the pastor's workshop, it is a rain forest. So I mean, we get rain, and when that rain hits, we just kind of stop because it's deafeningly loud. So there's Joe pointing out what's going on.
Really do out on the roof.
Yeah. So that's one of those baptismal cloths. I forget the story behind this one, but it was when they were rebuilding one of them, they had found that, so they kind of hung it there. And of course, it all comes down to the kids we got to meet while we were over there. This is the pastor who hosted us, Pastor Dewey. These are some of his grandchildren. This is Emmanuel. This is Blessing. And Pastor Saylor is walking with a couple of the other kids. And this is an idea of just sort of how the area around their houses and Zwedru is a city, kind of, but there's sort of just the neighborhood areas are kind of just dirt paths with grass, and you kind of walk where you need to go and things. So there's Pastor Saylor with some of the kids. And of course, there's always a soccer game going. Football.
There's the thatch roofs.
So yeah, there's a thatch roof. But you can see here they've plastered the cement over it. They even got like a way to close their window. Banana trees.
Now, when you go over there, did you have to get a lot of shots?
Yep. There are certain vaccinations I needed to get. Typhoid, hepatitis. I was taking malaria medication. There's something else too. I forget what it is.
Yellow fever?
Yeah, yellow fever. That's the one. Yep. So we had a flat tire at one point, and this was on our way in, and this was just stopping by the side of the road while they were fixing our tire. And I mean, he's got like rubber and rubber cement, and the guy's like making his own patch for us, because that's all you can do. You can't really just, hey, can we get a tire, kind of thing. So there's Blessing again. These are a few of the other grandkids. That's Emmanuel. This is the compound that we stayed at in Zwedru. Pastor Dewey has a house with several, and he's got several extended family living with him there. And so they've got a guest room that we can stay in. And so here we are, shortly after we arrived, probably.
Is he
the average temperature?
Who's that guy?
Hot. Oh, the temperature or the guy? It's hot. It's hot there. During the wet season, even it's just hot and humid. It's in the 80s, upper 80s, low 90s. At night, maybe into the 70s. It's just very, very hot and sticky. Very hot and sticky
A
there.
lot of sunshine.
Yeah. Yeah.
We don't know what that's like here.
Yeah. Not. Yeah.
Draw us a picture of what sunshine.
Yeah. Yeah.
So what type of, there's gotta be a lot of insects or bugs, isn't there?
Yeah, a lot of bugs, a lot of insects, of exotic sizes and kinds. I got a few pictures of those too, I'll share with you.
Snakes, a lot of snakes or?
Not really snakes, no.
That's lunch.
I mean, well, that's actually what I was about to say. If there's a snake in the neighborhood, it's delicious.
Chicken wings.
It's delicious. Yeah. So while we were there, we were there over a Sunday, so we did church, and so Pastor Saylor got to preach, I got to preach, Pastor Dewey got to preach. Yes, that's one service, and they were surprised how short our sermons were, because this is kind of an all-day thing. They're not at all surprised about that. And we got to do baptisms. The first time we were there, we did like 45 baptisms. And it ranged from small children, infants, but also adults, young adults, and older folks as well. And so when it came time for the baptisms, we had one person who was there. They had the list of names who was going to be baptized that day. And they brought out a table, and they put a cloth on it, put a cooking pot on there. It was full of water. And by the time it was done, I mean, there was water everywhere. I mean, it was just baptism all over the place. And, but it was just fantastic they would read the name and then we would baptize them and we would just kind of keep going. So there's an adult, young adult being baptized there.
I can see the water.
Was that a Parker shirt?
Is that water? Yeah.
Yeah, that's the water. I was kind of scooping it up. Yeah. Hands-on kind of thing. So there's Pastor Saylor preaching. Here I am preaching. So this is Pastor Taylor, Pastor Nathaniel Taylor. He was one of our associates over there that he helped coordinate everything for us. And sort of he led the pastor's workshop and handed off to us to do the teaching stuff. Here we are. They gave us little boutonnieres, like these little flower things. It's kind of cute. This lady wanted a picture with Pastor Saylor.
Is English the primary language?
It's yes, it's Liberian English, which is very abbreviated and sort of clipped language. What did Joe say? They never finish their sentences. They never finish their words even. You know, it's like, Ayun, but how are you doing? It took me a while to. I could start picking up some things that they were talking about. They could understand me fine, but I really had a hard time understanding them sometimes. I could tell it was English, but it took me a little while to catch up with it sometimes. So,
Yeah, I want to say again, your hello. In real Liberian English, your hello plenty. I'm once again privileged to have back here Pastor Saylor. And I'm Pastor Taylor, so just remove the S from his side, put my T there, and then give me the S so we work together. So I just want to say thank you plenty for sending this man by. And you know this time what he did? He said, well, I'm going to Liberia, but I won't make it by myself all alone. So he went somewhere in the corner and picked somebody else. So he brought this person to us in Liberia. We just were so happy in our hearts. Very happy in our heart because we have had Pastor Mike Saylor here once. For me, I met him once. and we became friends. And besides that, whatever he put in our head was so much. So we want to have him almost every other time. If you can give us Pastor Mike every other time, believe us, we have a greater man that come to our country to teach our people the word of God. So I just want to say to you all, thank you plenty. And not only that, not only Michael Koyama say you're with me. Let me tell you why he did. You see this thing here? We use it on a pastor shake. But if I tell you what is in it, I will give it to him, he hold it, and he feel it. So to tell you that, well, sometimes we get all kinds of things to put on our collar. And this one I got here is from Clorox bottle. And I had to prepare this to put on me, but you know what he did? He came this time, he took his shirt, after church service, he gave it to me. He took his car, after church service, he threw it to me. And what a gift is that? It's so marvelous and marvelous for me. So I want to tell you all our people, you all thank you plenty. You all thank you plenty. Please keep sending Pastor Mark to come. But let the women also come. We want the women to come. That's not the end. We want your women to come. I brought my wife today. I think you will see my wife. So that they all are calling you to come to teach us together. So I thank you again plenty for sending Pastor Mark. Don't hold him back from us. Send him to us. We appreciate it. We appreciate you. And thank you all plenty as a congregation. God bless you.
Yeah. So we did. After Sunday church, we were done preaching. We gave them our clerical shirts because they don't have clerical shirts there. So we gave them our clerical shirts and our collars, so that we've got the little tabs and things that are actually designed for that. His was cut from a Clorox bleach bottle, which doesn't feel all that different. I mean, it's just the same piece of plastic kind of thing. But so he was very happy that he said not only Pastor Saylor, but he went in a corner and found somebody else to bring with him. That was me, and so we got to be there together with Pastor Taylor, and so there we are, and with me, Pastor Saylor, and Pastor Taylor. So that was our first trip, and I have another little bit to share. So the second trip that we took, a year later, we brought, this is Vicar Aaron Virgin. He's now a pastor in the Detroit area. This is Ron Schum. I like the shirt. This is Ron Schum. He was a layman from Pastor Saylor's congregation. And then Joe, and then Mike and myself. And we went again to do another pastor's workshop to extend that out to Pastor Vicar Virgin also did some teaching while we were there. And then Pastor Saylor and I did some more workshops. Never used the slide. So there's where we are. This time we were in the dry season instead of the muddy season. So that was certainly better. So this is the second year of the conference, the third year, the fourth year, and then the 2013 conference that we did. This is our fifth year of doing it. There's me in the corner. There's Pastor Dewey. This is Pastor Pino. I'll share a story with Pastor Pino in just a minute. And then there's Aaron Virgin and Michael Saylor right there.
I wanted to ask you something about the food. Is there ever anything that you ate that, and then when you found out what it was, it made you sick?
I'll get to that in a minute. So this is the front of the church where we were doing our workshop. If I can jump ahead here. Come on.
Memory,
Yeah. All right, Pastor Pino. Pastor Pino is a 70-year-old man and had been serving as an evangelist, and the church in Liberia was going through a time when they were sort of wondering, you know, the missionaries came over, they started us, they had to leave because of the Civil War and things, and now, you know, they had trouble sort of grasping, what is our identity? Are we the church? Or do we need do we need Western missionaries to come and do things for us, or what can we do ourselves? And this actually mirrors the early part of the Missouri Synod in a very interesting way. Because when the Missouri Synod, Saxon immigrants came to St. Louis area, Perry County, they had an issue with their bishop, their head pastor that came over, and they had to depose him, and they literally sent him across the river, and so then they were sort of left wondering, well, we don't have a bishop, you know, are we still the church? Do we need to send, you know, where do we get our pastors from? Do they need to come from Germany? And how do we do all these things? And through the leadership of Dr. C.F.W. Walther and others, they began to see that no, we are the church, we are God's people, we have the means of grace. So they started their seminary, and they began teaching and training up pastors and things on their own, and here we are today. Well, the Liberian church was very much in that same boat in some ways, is that they had started, you know, we had been started by the Western missionaries, but what are we now? And that's why we would come over, and they would save all their baptisms till we got there and things. And in our first series with them, we were really teaching them that you're the church. You know, your pastors, you have the Word of God. That the continuity that we have there isn't about, you know, tracing it from, okay, so Jesus, you know, sent out Peter, who sent out the next, who sent out the next pastor. You know, we don't have to make that, you don't have to draw that continuity line right up to you to be able to say, you're a legitimate pastor, or you're a legitimate church. It's about, do you believe the Word of God? Are you confessing that truthfully? You are the church. And so Pastor Pino had they've been waiting even to do ordinations. And between the time that we visited the first time in 2012 and then to 2013, they had begun doing ordinations. They had begun doing their own baptisms and not waiting for the Western missionaries per se. So the first time we did 40-some baptisms. The next time we didn't do any. They were doing them, which was fantastic. They are the church. They don't need to wait for us to come over and do things. They can do things as the church themselves. And Pastor Pino got ordained, finally, in a way, got ordained. And while we were there, they presented him with a robe and a stole at 70-some years old. And it was just a real honor and a real privilege for him to receive that after all those years of his work with the gospel. So there he is. And you can just see how humbled he is and how thankful he is for the work of the Word of God in Liberia, in his life, and through him as well. Just a wonderful man. He wouldn't let us go without an embrace. So there we all are with Pastor Pino. I forgot to ask Mike how he was doing. So Ron Schum. Ron came as a lay person, and so we got to see just sort of behind the scenes. You know, it's one thing to have the pastors go over there, and we come back and we get to tell you about things, and it's like, oh yeah, it's great, it's fantastic, but you're supposed to be excited about those things, Pastor. What's it really like? And so we had Vicar Virgin come, and you can see this is just kind of how we spent our breaks. We'd get done for a minute, and they would just sort of swoop in and start talking with us about, this is what Ron was observing. He was saying, there was never really a down moment. As soon as we had a break, the pastors would come, and one would be with Vicar Virgin or Pastor Saylor or myself, and they were just always wanting to to ask more questions and learn more and just study and study and study. It's so humbling to know that some of these guys would have walked a day or two's worth to get to a road, then to hitchhike on a taxi or whatever, just to sit on these wooden benches and listen. So enjoy your padded chairs. You know, it's like you kind of get perspective sometimes.
You look warm.
It was hot, yeah. Those were hot days for sure. So then Ron himself got to see what was going on, and they were interested in what he had to know. He was an engineer and a farmer, and I'll tell you what, Ron coming and seeing how they do construction or how they would plant their corn and things like that, it about drove him insane, because they didn't do row cropping and they didn't do, I mean, it was all he could do to start being the foreman while he was there. But they were so interested in what he had to say and him being there, and Ron just came back just overwhelmed with the impact of preaching and teaching their pastors, and then the indigenous pastors then going out and doing the missionary work among their own communities.
When you mentioned farming, did they have any livestock? Because in none of your pictures, I didn't see any.
Yes, yeah, they do have livestock, cattle, and some things like that in some of those areas also. Yeah, a lot of it is just hunting though. There is some hunting and trapping. They have deer. They're kind of like key deer, like down in the Florida Keys. They're kind of the tiny deer. The small deers, and
But they have, cattle and chickens and even, is that?
yep, they keep chickens and cattle and things like that as well. Yep. Yeah, so we do get some beef and things like that. So in Monrovia is right on the coast, and the beaches there are actually gorgeous. I mean, they're beautiful, but they're not exactly safe. Because, well, there's a lot of homelessness, there's no operating sewer systems, and so come the morning time, everybody goes down to the ocean and defecates, and then they're kind of back to things. So it's not exactly the place to go swimming and things like that, but the beaches really are pretty beautiful and gorgeous that we have there. This is us walking through the streets of Monrovia, sort of near the Lutheran compound, they call it. It's they have most areas in the city have these walled structures with barbed wire, and there's glass embedded in the tops of the cement and stuff like that, because this is also still recovering from Civil War. There's still a lot of lawlessness and things there. So during the daytime, we felt pretty safe, but there are other times where we'd have been very, very, very cautious with that. But this is walking through the streets of Monrovia near our compound that we stayed.
So do they have any type of law enforcement?
The UN, basically. Yeah, and now according to Joe, the UN peacekeepers have moved out. They still have advisors that are there that are training Liberian natives to be their own security forces. It'll get there. So this is more into the rural areas. You see the red dirt and mud. This is one of the schools up here. This is just on a little break on the road that we had. All right, soup and rice. Here's what we ate while we were there, and you can see Ron's face there. I think that tells a good story. Aaron version was a little more adventurous for us, but so it's basically just white rice with a greens of some sort, whether it's cassava leaf or potato greens or kind of whatever greens are out there and edible. And they cook them within an inch of their life, and then whatever meat was available at that time, whether one day it was chicken, another day it was goat, another day it was bush meat. It's like, what's that? They're like, it's kind of whatever we found in the woods that day, Yeah. So I remember the first day that we were there, we were at the main compound, and they had a couple dogs, and they're real friendly and all this kind of stuff. Just hang on. And we get to eating that day and things like that, and I know it's not chicken, and I asked Joe, I'm like, what are we eating here? I pull out a bone. It's a femur bone. It's about yay big, and I'm just kind of like, what are we eating? And he's like, it's deer. It's deer. Femur this big on a deer? I wasn't really aware of the diminutive size of the deer at that point. I did not believe him. We got back to the compound that night. And the 2 dogs came running. I was worried at first, and he was like, Joe was kind of like, "What's your problem?" And I said, "I thought we were eating the dogs." He said, "We don't eat the dogs." And I'm like, "Okay, good." And then he explained to me about the deer are small. So I was like, "Okay." They had me going for a little while though. I was nervous, but no, they don't eat the dogs. And then, so whatever meat is there, again, is kind of cooked within an inch of existence. And then peppers. Hot peppers. And then more hot peppers. And then more hot peppers. It is the hottest, spiciest food I have ever encountered in my entire life. It is so incredibly spicy. And I would literally get a bowl of rice and a little bit of the greens and mix that through, and it was barely edible. It was so spicy.
Is that just a mask?
And it's the mask, the state of whatever meat is there, and things. Yeah, I think it's a combination of all those things. And they just like really, really spicy food. And I took Joe out to lunch after church last week and at Gandalf's, and she was like, "Do you want chorizo in your breakfast burrito? It's like a spicy Mexican sausage sort of thing." He's like, "Oh yeah, absolutely." He gets it there and he's eating it, and he's like, I was like, "Joe, short of there being molten lava on your breakfast burrito, you are not going to be intimidated by anything we can give you. Like, if I take you to a Taiwanese place, maybe we can intimidate you, but it's just incredibly spicy."
I think what was interesting when you came back, yes, we were all worried about you guys all getting sick over there. And you said none of you got sick from the food or the water.
Yeah, none of us got sick from the food or water because Joe gave us good instructions. He said, eat cooked things. Don't eat the raw lettuce or tomatoes or anything like that. Always eat the cooked things. I carried a lot of hand sanitizer. There was bottled water available to us. Joe always made sure we had plenty of bottled water. And of course, all the kids wanted high fives and handshakes and all that kind of stuff. And sanitation is not a thing there. So we did lots of fist bumps. There was very little hand-to-hand contact there. And yeah, mercifully, God preserved us. I didn't get sick while I was there. None of the guys got sick, which was a real possibility. I mean, it was a very real possibility. Oh yeah, we lost weight while we were there. Yeah.
Just walking.
Well, we walk a lot of the places, and just the heat and the dehydration, and then we just didn't eat nearly as much. I ate a lot of. I brought protein bars and stuff for breakfast, power bars, that kind of stuff, and we'd have dried oatmeal packets that Joe had for us and stuff like that. So we did okay. I had the instant Starbucks Via packets, so I could have some coffee in the morning and stuff, and so that worked out okay. We made do. I'll tell you about what else we found, but
how do they preserve their food? Like refrigerators? I'm sure they don't have
salts. Yeah, they do a lot of salt preserving, drying, and they do have some refrigeration if they're running off of generators. So like at Pastor Dewey's house, he had a chest freezer that we would keep water in, and then for every night for several hours, they would fill up the generator with gas, and they would run the generator. So we'd have lights, and everybody would start charging their phones, and not just us. I mean, like everybody would come and charge their phones. They'd even watch some TV, and it would run that freezer, and it would just get as cold as it could until it ran out of gas, and then we'd be asleep by then. So the next morning we'd still have some coldish water, which was kind of nice. But yeah, there wasn't also a lot of need for refrigeration, just because what you cooked was eaten, and then you went to the market the next day and got what you needed next, and so that was another thing as well. It's all freshly butchered kind of stuff as well.
I'm sure they didn't have anything like a Walmart out there. What kind of markets did they have?
No, not exactly. There were some. There was certainly market and commerce for dried goods and canned goods and things like that. I even found some like Aldi's cornflakes in one of the shops and stuff like that. I'll show you some pictures of that as well. So a variety of things for sure.
Well, to be quite honest, that's really not much different than when I was raised. I was raised in West Virginia. The ready play, food.
Yeah.
Everything had to be corrected in the
Yeah, definitely think, this is sort of pre-industrial, maybe early, Great Depression style infrastructure. Outhouses, everybody's running generators, but at the same time, you can see people sort of becoming their own power companies. Because you'd see extension cords kind of run to different places if the guy had a generator, and then people could pay him to hook into his generator, and it was very interesting how industrious they were.
I always tell a farmer, pioneer had it.
Yeah, right. And we're handing out candy and bubbles and stuff like that, and mainly the main non-African people that were there in this area were Chinese, doing road construction and doing mining and a lot of different things there. So whenever they see somebody who's not Liberian, it would always be Chinese man. So it's like, hey, Chinese man, candy. So,
They weren't doing, missionary work, obviously. That was their business.
yeah, industry, mining, infrastructure, that kind of stuff. Which now Joe was telling me that basically China's pulled out at this point. So
really?
Yeah.
They just didn't find resources, or what?
Yeah, I think at this point the economics of it shifted away, so they've shifted out of there until it's again economically viable for them to come in. So, yeah. So we gave them a Bible, we gave them a copy of the Lutheran Confessions. They were very proud of those to continue to grow in their knowledge of what it means to be a Lutheran pastor. Zwedru was the name of the town that we stayed in. So we've got Aaron, but Aaron Dewey, which is Pastor Dewey's son, had just graduated from college or from high school, and was very, very proud of that, so that he can now begin work as a mechanic and start earning a living. And there's always something that needs to get fixed. And so Aaron Dewey and Aaron Virgin, the vicar, kind of became close friends while we were there. I mean, they really connected. We're drying clothes out here on the grass. So Aaron Dewey and his friends kind of took Aaron Virgin out a couple nights just to go hang out and see what was going on. Showed him around town. Then we got to visit the schools, and then there's Aaron Dewey. He's going to, not a mechanic, he's going to be a teacher. He's going to get ready to be a teacher in the school. He also came to the workshop, and he was very proud of that too. So this is, these are some of the markets in the streets as we go along. These are peppers. It's like, I was like, I can't even touch it. It's gonna melt my fingers. And
Those
then
green bananas, they
and then-
don't need them green, do they?
the bananas there. Those are actually plantains.
Oh.
So those are starchier, and they do get more green. These are just some kids that we met on the side of the road. Everybody wants to get their picture taken. They're just always ready to get their picture taken. Aaron sat with the choir during church on Sunday, and we sang with the choir. That was kind of fun.
It's like you had a really good time, it was a great experience for you.
Yeah, talk about the schools a little bit. There's the cinder blocks that they're making. Large courtyard area where you saw the kids doing the Pledge of Allegiance and singing last week. Flagpole, office
Looks
and
like a
things.
US flag too.
Well, it's very close. It's got the red and white stripes, a blue field, and one star. We gave little bracelets, and we gave them pencils and different things that they needed for their schoolwork. Learning some geometry. These are some of the upper grades.
Where do they get their teachers from?
The communities. Joe trains the teachers, and then they are able to train each other and the next generation kind of thing. Here's another one of the school buildings. So there's sort of a before and after with the stucco.
Well, you can see.
Working with drainage,
If it was
yeah.
rainy, that would really be, the water slick,
Yeah.
yeah.
Is it like a harder clay type of, or is it just more like just
It's like Georgia clay. Georgia clay, so as soon as it gets wet, it's thick, sticky, and pretty gross. So St. Jude in Zwedru is where we did the pastors' workshops. They were building a new church. So this is the church that we were operating in, and then they were building a bigger church right around it. So they built the walls around the outside of it, with the old church still inside. And then when the time would come, they would dismantle the church inside, and then there they would be.
Reuse any material they can.
And they'll reuse whatever they can, yeah. So this is Redeemer Lutheran Church, also in Zwedru. Very, very small, but again, just different parts of the city. People will just walk to their local church area, and that's where they'll be. Sort of pretty typical front. So they have preaching, and then the tables for the altar.
The candle melted.
Yeah,
Probably just from the heat.
it's just hot. And this is a foundation for a new church. And what's interesting is when they have money, they'll buy the materials, they'll build what they can. When the money dries out, they wait. And then when they get more money, they'll build some more. So this might take, a year or more to finally build, but they'll get to it eventually. In the city of Monrovia, we did church there, and so this was the choir was singing, and it's just a full-on big deal kind of thing. When the choir's singing, everybody's involved. Here we are in Zwedru at St. Jude. And the place is just absolutely packed. They had us sitting up in the front, getting ready to preach when it was our turn. Here's the choir. Everybody's got their Sunday best on. So we got back to Monrovia, and there's a place called ELWA, Evangelical Lutheran World something. Oh, I forget the name of the acronym, but Elwa, big compound there where Samaritan's Purse actually operates out of. And we had reason to be there, a story I'll tell next week since I'm out of time. But the Elwa compound does have safe beaches, and it's just beautiful there. You can just sort of see how really nice it is. And Mike is envisioning doing a pastor's workshop there in Monrovia at Elwa, and so he's practicing. There's some of the housing we would have there at Elwa as well. So next week I'm going to talk a little bit, show you a little more about our time in the city of Monrovia, and a little bit more about the country life. Pastor Taylor, his wife, when she had a stroke, how we helped care for her, and some of those other aspects. Then we'll move on to some other missionary topics as well. So just interesting to see different parts of the world, how they make do with what they have, with what God has provided, and how content they can be with the Word of God. It's enough. And whatever else He provides is also a blessing. So it's really pretty wonderful. So, all right. So I got to go, but so we'll share